And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Hello, I'm National Weather Service meteorologist Peter Chan, and this is your Alaska Aviation Weather Outlook on this Tuesday, August 5th, 2025. And to set things up, we do have an area of low pressure that's crossing the lower Aleutians with a secondary low that's going to fling quite a bit of moisture up along the Alaska Peninsula and through Kodiak Island as we go through later this Tuesday night, and into the day on Wednesday. In fact, some areas here with that strong southeasterly moist flow could see a few inches, 3 inches of rainfall. And that frontal system will be working its way northeastward with the breezy conditions. There could be some turbulence and even low-level wind shear extending along the Alaska Peninsula, especially up into you get up to the entrance of Cook Inlet. And so Wednesday morning we expect IFR conditions from again Kamishak Bay, Lower Cook Inlet, down along especially east side of Kodiak Island, Pacific side of the Alaska Peninsula. Over toward off of the Gulf, there are some areas of IFR offshore of Sitka and a little further off there from Craig. In the north, there could be some MVFR, pockets of IFR along the west arm of the Alaska Range, Wood-Tikchik State Park, also here in the Brooks spine of the Brooks Range, and IFR conditions along the eastern Beaufort Sea coast. Wednesday afternoon, could be a few thunderstorms pop up vicinity Yukon Flats and down toward 40 Mile Gold Country. We have IFR conditions offshore of the Panhandle there off of Prince of Wales Island, and again off of Sitka with MVFR conditions in the Gulf. Still persistent IFR conditions, especially eastern side of Kodiak Island and the Alaska Peninsula, with extensive IFR in the Bering and through central Aleutians. Thursday morning, still VFR conditions across much of the interior, but some IFR conditions along the spine of the eastern half of the Brooks Range, along the Beaufort Sea coast. Pockets of IFR down here in through the Panhandle, as well as back out here into the western Gulf from the eastern Kenai, parts of Lower Cook Inlet, and then again along Kodiak Island and the Alaska Peninsula. And even some IFR creeping upwards into areas, again, Wood-Tikchik State Park area and the areas around Bristol Bay extending inland. For Thursday afternoon, we find with that front slowly working its way eastward, IFR, a band of IFR associated with the lower cloud cover and rain showers. IFR conditions Thursday afternoon, west arm of the Alaska Range, especially rainy pass down through Lake Clark and Merrill. And again out to the west here, we find some IFR conditions there inland from Bristol Bay, and then out over the Bering and in through especially the central Aleutians. So the passes in the north there, east central Brooks Range, Anatuvik, and Adigan Pass should see generally MVFR conditions on Wednesday. Further south, IFR conditions to start Lake Clark and Merrill becoming MVFR, and there'll also be some rain, lower ceilings, and visibility as a result. Rainy Pass IFR becoming MVFR. Windy Pass MVFR conditions should become VFR as we get through later morning and for the afternoon. Isabel Pass should generally hold on to VFR conditions, as will Mentasta Pass as you go through the eastern Alaska Range. Tanita Pass, VFR conditions there, and then on Portage Pass, we are expecting still VFR conditions there on Wednesday. And in the north end of the Panhandle at Chilkoot and White, we expect VFR conditions to prevail. So the freezing levels at the surface is just off the Beaufort Sea coastline, way to the north. You can see the freezing levels aloft come upward rather quickly. This tighter gradient indicates there's a front, that we have a stationary front here across the far north, draped across the Brooks Range into northwest Canada. But the area of low pressure is back here, eastern Aleutians, with a secondary low down here in the North Pacific, and out ahead of the frontal system that's working its way north and eastward. We find freezing levels aloft as high as 12 and 14,000 feet. So where we have thicker cloud cover producing the rain, we could find icing pretty high up, though, above 14,000 feet over the southeast Bering into the north end of the Alaska Peninsula toward entrance of Cook Inlet, and then above 16,000 feet near and south of Kodiak Island over toward Perryville and Chicknick, and this is the area here that will be picking up some of the heavier rainfall as we go through this Tuesday evening and Tuesday night, and then into the day on Wednesday, spreading slowly northeastward. Another area potential icing could be above 10,000 feet along areas of the Brooks Range where we have that frontal boundary stalled. At 30,000 feet jet stream level, we have a few different low circulations, one out here, British Columbia, north of Vancouver Island, but this is the one we're watching, 105 knot jet max at 30,000 feet. And then across the north off the Chukchi Sea and along the Arctic coast, northwest winds 70-75 knots at 9,000 feet. Very clearly the low circulation here near and just north of the eastern Aleutians. And with that frontal boundary, we find winds 35 to locally as high as 50 knots. As a result, we bring it down to 3,000 feet, and there's clearly a stronger wind field closer just above the surface. So 45 to even 60 knot winds coming in around Lake Iliamna, so there could be some low-level wind shear in addition to the turbulence associated with that front and the circulation around this low. So again, on Wednesday, the greatest threat for turbulence will be over southwest areas of the state. Widespread moderate turbulence expected around Kodiak Island, Shelikof Strait, the upper half, 2/3 of the Alaska Peninsula, including Lake Iliamna, areas around and inland from Bristol Bay, Cape Newingham, and areas of the northern Alaska Peninsula could see some isolated severe turbulence in addition to some low-level wind shear as that frontal boundary gradually works its way northward with some moderate to heavy rain. Back behind the system, could be some isolated moderate turbulence, mainly through the central Aleutians on Wednesday, surface to 3,000 feet.